You are carrying bricks. You are putting one brick on top of another. For them, they are managing. For us, we are building. Now we think that if we cooperate and make headway, the sky is the limit for Uganda. Imagine the amount of money we have received from them in oil and gas. Imagine the amount of money, it's over 3 billion.
Right.
Imagine the amount of money we have got from them in mining, in infrastructure. We are now talking about Jinja-Kampala Express Highway.
Are we?
These guys, they could help us to manage our society. We have gone into a management with them. I've never heard of an ambassador being a board member where I am chairman. Now you have seen they have lined all of them.
We are co-chairing.
Yeah, we are co-chairing.
We are co-chairing.
He's also managing to chair Africans. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. In line with the Ministry of Health instructions and guidelines.
So, Your Excellency, he and I are too excited about the prospects before you. I want to ask you, sir, that thank you for accepting to meet us. Thank you for asking the Prime Minister to meet us. We had a wonderful, wonderful interaction with the Prime Minister. He has promised that he's going to arrange for us to meet you as well. And we have a lot to say to help you, especially fight corruption. We want to be part and parcel of that fight. Your Excellency, all these people are waiting for you. We are a complete waste of time, me and him. The sooner we sit down and invite the Minister for Finance to come and invite you, the better. Please, thank you for tolerating us.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, sir, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Your Excellency, the European Ambassador to Uganda, and the other representatives from the various countries in Europe, my colleague, the Minister in charge of Industry, Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, the Private Sector Foundation, the Chairman and the Board, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda and the European Union for organizing this first ever Uganda European Union Business Forum. Sir, this business forum will go a long way in fostering business relations between Uganda and the European Union, as they have adequately explained here. Two, this forum confirms our long-held view that trade and investment is the best way to support developing countries to move away from chronic poverty and for supporting them to achieve the economic aspirations. In this regard, the European Union is one of the biggest trading partners for Uganda. In 2018, trade between Uganda and the European Union mounted to euros 989 million, of which exports to them mounted to euros 473 million. Given the potential in Uganda, the volume of this trade can be tripled in a very few years if the existing bottlenecks can be resolved. And as you've heard, they have tried to do precisely that during the course of their discussions. Indeed, at this summit, quite a number of these bottlenecks have been discussed, and we're trying to find solutions, as it was just stated here. On the other note, the European Union is one of the few development partners that continues to provide grant financing to government of Uganda. Uganda, they should have clapped for that, Ugandans. Part of this support goes directly and indirectly to support trade and investment between the two partners and even within, Your Excellency, the East African community. In addition, the European Union is supporting improvement of our export products to enable us qualify and sustain our exports to the European market. Running related programs and projects supporting trade and investments in Uganda include the following. 1, under transport infrastructure, we have the Kampala Northern Bypass, we have the rehabilitation of Tororo-Gulu Railway and the Gulu Business Hub, we have the upcoming Kampala-Jinja Expressway. 2, under agriculture and sustainable development, we have the Development Initiative for Northern Uganda, the support to coffee and cocoa value chains in Uganda, the developing a market-oriented and environmentally sustainable beef meat industry. Let me repeat this, sir, because I know you grow cotton like I do. Developing a market-oriented and environmentally sustainable beef meat industry in Uganda as a project. Lastly, and promoting commercial aquaculture projects also in Uganda. Today, sir, we are signing 3 additional grant financing agreements worth euros 85.9 million, equivalent to Ugandan shillings $1,343,000,000, to support various projects and programs in Uganda. Let me repeat this, sir. Today, we are signing 3 additional grant financing agreements, which are worth 85.9 million euros, or in Uganda shillings 343 billion, to support various projects and programs in Uganda. For the budget support program, under the fiscal decentralization program and service delivery, it is 32 million euros. For inclusive green economy uptake program, it is worth 45 billion euros. For technical support program number 2, it is worth 8.9 million euros. I therefore wish to take this opportunity to thank the European Union delegation in Uganda for supporting the Sustainable Business for Uganda platform, which will go a long way in enhancing synergies and coordination arrangements as a prerequisite for attracting more investment and business in our country. Sir, with these brief remarks, it's my singular honor to invite you to address the gathering. Thank you.
Their Excellencies, the European Union ambassadors, the honorable ministers, and the business people who are here today from both Europe and Uganda. The human race has been through different systems. There was a man called Karl Marx, who is not very popular these days, but that man identified that the human race had gone through 5 systems. The first system was the primitive communal system. The second system was the slave state. The third system was feudalism, feudal arrangement. The fourth system was capitalism. And by the time he wrote, he was anticipating, this was in 1848 when he wrote his manifesto, he was anticipating a new system called socialism. So these are the 5 production systems that the human race has gone through in the last 4.5 million years when they have been here on Earth. Now, in the last 200 years, in Europe, we had the 2 systems. The capitalist system, from the time of the French Revolution, 1789, and later on, the socialist system in the Soviet Union. Now, the hallmark of especially the capitalist system is the concept of profit, to make profit. And this is where the efficiency comes in, where that system has turned out to be one of the most efficient, although it has got some limitations. It was a very good mechanism of assessing efficiency. That is, when you compare the input cost, what you put in, and then the price of the final product. The difference between the two is what we call profit. And for almost 500 years, starting with the mercantile class, the middle class has been looking for profits. The higher the profits, the better. And Africa has been lagging behind for some reasons which I will talk about later. So therefore, when you talk about business, in the capitalist sense, you must talk about profits. And when you talk of profits, you must talk of the minimization of costs and the maximization of profits. This is what we are talking about. Now, when we have been very active on the African scene for the last almost 60 years. We were a new group, started as a student movement in the 1960s, and we were very clear about all these issues. That's why we never beat about the bush, because we know exactly what we are talking about. Therefore, in the case of improving Uganda as a business destination, we are to deal with all these bottlenecks, starting with security, the capacity of the state. You can have, there are 3 words which sometimes people mix up. The word country, then nation, and then state. People mix the 2, the 3. The country is the land which is on which you live. Nation are people who originate from one source, who descend from one source. The state is the organized authority over that land. So you can have a country without a state. The country is there, but it has no organized authority over it, or you have got a criminal state over that country, like we had with Idi Amin here. Here we had a state which was criminal, in charge of the country. Or you can have a state without a country. At one time, the French, de Gaulle, had a state in exile. He had an army, he had civil servants, but they were not in France, they were somewhere else. So he had a state without a country. And there were a number of people in that category. Even the King of Holland, I think, was in that category. Denmark maybe also. They had a government in exile, but they had structures. So in the case of Africa, one of the challenges has been the weakness or absence of the state. The country is there, called X, but the state is either not there, like in Somalia, or it is weak. Now, in the case of Uganda, why you talk of Uganda being an island of peace, it is because we resolved the issue of the state. We created a capable indigenous state. And in order to do that, we had to first of all destroy the remnants of the colonial state, because there was another state before, which was the colonial state. The colonial army led by Idi Amin. You have heard of Idi Amin. And those clowns. So those people had created a criminal state over us. It's a long story. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. So we had to remove that state and create our own state, the state we have in Uganda, especially the armed forces, are indigenous. Some of the other the new and the old, we are moving together. So that's why, that is reason number one, why I think you should look at Uganda as a good investment destination, because the issue of the state has been resolved here. Nobody can cause insecurity here or bring down chaos in Uganda, because we have got a capable state. Now, then after that, because remember, the target is to lower the cost of doing business in Uganda. Because otherwise, if the cost of doing business don't come down, that business will not succeed. So after dealing with the issue of the state, we have had to also deal with the issue of electricity, because one of the biggest cost pushers are electricity, energy, transport, the cost of money, and the cost of labor. We are not likely to create a good atmosphere for business. And I regard these as hardware issues. Because when you are talking of problems, some of the problems are hardware. Is it hardware they call it? And others are software issues. and you should make a distinction between the two. It is a bit easier to deal with the software issues because those are organizational. But the hardware is physical. If you don't deal with it, there's no way you can move. If you don't deal with the physical hardware issues, like transport, if you don't have a rail to transport goods, what are you going to do? Even if you are efficient, even if you are no corruption, but how are you going to move things? So that's why for us, we started with the hardware issues. One of the hardware issues is the state, because the state had to be there. And the good thing is that this is an indigenous state now. For the first time in 500 years, we have an indigenous and capable state in Uganda. Before colonialism, for almost 500 years, 400 years, we had these tribal states. There was one state before which collapsed around 1500. We had one kingdom which was covering much of Uganda and part of the Great Lakes. But that kingdom collapsed around 1400. And it was replaced by these mini states, kingdoms which were fighting among themselves. Then they were taken over by the colonial state. Now all of them, the tribal states and the colonial state had a lot of problems. I don't have time to go into them. But now we have been able to create that indigenous state. That's why you hear that Uganda does not need the United Nations to defend us. If you are looking for security support to go to other places, we don't need anybody to defend us against any threat. We can defend ourselves. The UN are here as guests. They go to other places, but they don't. We don't need security support, security to be defended by other people. Now, having dealt with that, then the issue of the hardware issues, the railway. I studied French about 58 years ago. I had studied French and I was moving very well. Fermez la porte. Ouvrez la porte. I was moving very well. But the problem I had was that some of the words were women, some were men. So my problem was, which word is woman and which word is man? And how do you know? Then the teacher said, no, you must cram everything. I said, please, bye-bye. But before I said bye-bye to French, I picked one word. Dormir. Dormir. Dormir beaucoup. Dormir. Is that how you pronounce it? Dormir, to sleep. Dormir. Dormir beaucoup. Now, in Africa, there's been a lot of dormir. Really, people don't know what to do. Of course, this is not new. In Europe, they had a lot of problems. When the Roman Empire collapsed in the Western Roman Empire in 450 AD, then they went through 1,000 years of chaos. It was called the Dark Ages. Then later on, Renaissance came, and the Europeans started coming up again. But even then, they didn't know what to do. People were coming with different ideas. For instance, there was one idea called bullionism, where they believed that if you have a lot of gold and a lot of silver, you will be rich. Now, Portugal and Spain excelled in that. They went to Latin America, killed all the Red Indians, stole all the gold and all the silver, but ended up being the most backward countries in Europe. So bullionism was not working, but it took time for people to discover that bullionism was a wrong strategy. Then in France, there was a group called physiocrats. These believed that all value was from agriculture, that agriculture was the most important. Of course, that idea was also not very correct. If you only depend on agriculture, you are not going to succeed. It was not until 1776, you can imagine, from 1400 when the Renaissance started, 1776, that's almost 300 years or something like that. When Adam Smith is one of the people who helped European thinking to know where to go. Adam Smith is the one who said, please, what is most important is specialization, division of labor, and exchange. That's how he wrote that book of his called The Wealth of Nations. And that helped Europeans really to start knowing where to go. So even here in Africa, you have got all those, like the children of Israel. When they left Egypt, they spent 40 years in the desert. That place is not very far. But they were 40 years in the desert, wandering, going from here to they didn't know where to go. This what has been happening in Africa. People are just wandering around. This one is saying this one is saying that, this one is saying that. But I think things are beginning to come together. And recently, if you can get that document fortunately, some of us have been here for quite a bit of time. For the last almost 60 years, I have been watching. Not only watching, but actually very much involved for most of the time. And we were able to see where the problem was. And that's why in these last meetings in the African Union, that speech which I gave in TICAD, because we went to Japan. We were called to Japan. Africans go to all these places, Japan, China, India, Turkey, America. They are always going, Africans, they are always good at traveling. Now I could see these Japanese really were confused. They were looking at us. But these Africans, the countries, the continent is so rich. Why are they poor? You could see the question was in their head. But they didn't want to ask it because they know they are very polite. They don't want to offend people. So I detected this. I said, I think I should help these people to answer. And that's why that speech which I gave in the TICAD of Nairobi. TICAD is the Africa-Japan something. It is an abbreviation for the Japan-Africa meeting. That speech, the one I gave in Nairobi, not the one which was edited by other people, the one I gave. If you can give it to If that's, you are sure this is the one?
Yes.
So, in that speech, we were able to point out 10 bottlenecks that have really been the problem in Africa, and one had to handle them almost simultaneously in order to move. So some of these bottlenecks, which either impede business or raise costs and make it impossible for business to take place. One of them is electricity, but all those are under one heading: infrastructure as a heading. It's one of the 10. There are 9 others, including what you are talking about in your summary here, the skills. You are talking about skills. For us, in our bottlenecks, we are putting it together as a human resource development. We are summarizing it as the human resource development in a summarized way. Education, health, and skills, they must be together. So when it's one of the bottlenecks. Of course, one of the bottlenecks, which is no longer very much a problem now, was the anti-private sector policies of the states, of the governments of Africa from in the 1960s. Like Idi Amin here, he expelled all the Indians, the Asians, he expelled them. And before him, another one of our leaders called Obote had confiscated private companies and made them government companies. So you had all those bottlenecks to the development affected the development of the economy. So in the case of Uganda, apart from building a capable state, we have dealt with some of the bottlenecks, the one of electricity, the one of transport, together with our brothers in Kenya and Tanzania. We are building standard gauge railways from the ocean, Indian Ocean to Mwanza in Tanzania, and from Mombasa to Kisumu in Kenya, and also we are going to start here in Uganda. And that's why I'm very happy with the European Union for helping us to repair the old line, the one from Tororo to South Sudan. That's a step in the right direction. Because if you are talking about business, you must solve the issue of transport, especially cargo transport. Road transport is good, but it's good for human beings and so on. But for cargo, you need the rail and water transport. They are the ones which can make us competitive. Then electricity. We had a problem here because for a long time, even our own civil servants, we are not concentrating on electricity. It was a conceptual problem. You find a big country like Nigeria. At one time I was discussing with President Obasanjo. I think by the time he came in, Nigeria, a country of 200 million people, had like 1,000 megawatts. You see, total dollar. It's not that they didn't have the money to build, no, but nobody thought that this was important. That was the problem. Here in Uganda, when we came into government, Uganda had 60 megawatts. The whole country, 60 megawatts. And you had the president and ministers and commissioner. There was even a commissioner of electricity. but the money was a commission of darkness. So, total, so the cost of electricity, then the cost of money. The cost of money, that's another big problem. These commercial banks are a disaster. They are actually part of the problem of Africa today. Because they only give loans. If you give a loan at 25%, 27%, how can anybody engaged in manufacturing or even services like tourism manage that money and to be paid in a very short time? How would somebody manage? So those commercial banks, their job is to facilitate the importation of Chinese cheap products, because it's only the traders who can borrow and pay back that type of money. So those banks are import facilitating banks. They are parasites. And that's why I refused to privatize Uganda Development Bank, because we had privatized Uganda Commercial Bank, we had privatized the Cooperative Bank, but they didn't help, because it's a wrong, it's a mistake. So the cost of money is another problem, another bottleneck. We had the cost of labor here, of course, is not high, so that would not be a problem. So that's number one. If you are talking about business, you must talk about profits. And if you are talking about profits, you must talk about lowering the costs of doing business in order to get a good return on your investment. And that's what we are doing here. So a capable state, and then dealing with the issue of costs into production. But then, from the beginning, business has two people: a producer and a consumer. If you produce something and nobody buys, or they don't buy enough, the business will not continue. And this is what capitalism discovered, because when Adam Smith helped Europe to get a compass to see how to move forward, then what they were calling the invisible hand, the search by the private sector to look for profits, which was very efficient, made production go up from the time of the Industrial Revolution, around 1700, when one Englishman called Thomas Savery invented the steam engine. Production in Europe went up until 1929, when the capitalist system collapsed with the crash of 1929. What was the problem? The discrepancy between production and consumption. Too much productive capacity, low consumption capacity. I'm surprised when I go to these meetings. I really sometimes keep quiet or sleep. It's better in those meetings. Because that's how you survive. You sleep, and when you are waking up, they are closing the meeting. But you find these people have not learned all these histories. Because you see, in 1929, when the capitalist system had that crisis, that's how economists like Maynard Keynes came along. And he said, you people, you must look at the issue of aggregate demand. And he even said, it is useful to get somebody to dig a hole and fill it again without producing anything, but you pay him so that he has got money and goes and buys. That's what how Maynard Keynes advised Europe. And Europe seems to have woken up. They introduced the welfare state. You know, this business of even when you are not employed, you are given money, so that at least you can be part of the purchasing power. That's how it came about. But it seems these days people have forgotten about that. When you hear them talking, they seem no longer to focus on the relationship between production and consumption. If you produce and nobody consumes, then the business will collapse. And that's why Africa comes in. And that's why I want to welcome Europe from Dormir Buku. Bienvenido, how to say you are welcome? In Portuguese, say bienvenido. Bienvenido in Portuguese, you are most welcome. How do they say it in French? You are welcome. Huh? Bienvenue, the same. Oh, okay, so you are most welcome. Then Africa has been very confusing. Africa is the origin of man. All of you are former Africans. We regard you as the African diaspora. But the problem is that when you, the diaspora, you left, this was like 100,000 years ago, not long ago. The population which stayed in Africa did not multiply very much. You, the diaspora, you multiplied more. That's why I've got very many Chinese, many Indians, even the Europeans. But the population of Africa, even today, when the population has gone up a bit, you can imagine that Africa is 12 times the size of India in land size. You can fit India into Africa 12 times. But even today, the population of India is still slightly bigger than the population of the whole of Africa. That's what many people do not understand, don't grasp. But because, and why did our population remain small? As you can see, this climate is very good for us, certainly good for me. But it is also good for our enemies, the mosquitoes, the tsetse flies, the bacteria. So that's how the population of Africa remained small. And it has been small until now with modern medicine, when it has come up, 1.25 billion now. But in the next 30 years, it will be 2.5 billion. So therefore, for the first time in human history, for the first time since the human being evolved, from the monkeys. You remember we were something else before? And about 4.5 million years ago, we became nearly what we are now. Now, this is 4.5 million years. Now, in all this time, the population in Africa has been small because of a small population in a huge continent with a lot of natural resources. A country like Congo, DRC, is about the same size as India in land area, with a lot of resources. But the population even today is only about 80 million. So when you have a small population in the midst of plentiful natural resources, where, first of all, in such a population, in such a situation, fools don't die easily. Even a fool can survive. But there are all sorts of issues. But now, for the first time, because of modern medicine, population of Africa will be 2.5 billion in the next 30 years. So therefore, one person in every 3 will be an African in the next 30 years. So therefore, it's good that Europe has really seen this point, and you seem to have seen it, and you have come, and this is most welcome. Your friends, the Chinese, had seen this before. I don't know why they saw it before, and they have been very active here. You know, doing this, doing that, and yet I don't speak a single word of Chinese, except xie and the other one, ni hao. I just know 2 words, but as you can hear, I am not a bad speaker of English. But we are not really seriously engaged in terms of business cooperation. And there was a lot of waste of time with aid and all that, wasting time, and then talking about homosexuals, what. Please, those are small things we can deal with. We know how to deal with all those. But let's deal with the uncontroversial issue of business, because that one is clear. So, therefore, number one, the state, a capable state. Number two, dealing with the bottlenecks to business, including the costs of doing business in an economy, starting with the hardware issues. Now, number three, the market. That's how you have the market of Uganda, 42 million people, the market of East Africa, 200 million people, the market of the whole of Africa, 1.25 billion, who will be 2.5 billion in a few years to come. And then third-party markets. Third-party markets meaning if you invest here, you will not only sell in the whole of Africa, but also sell back to Europe, sell to China, sell to the United States. And we have worked on all of those. Because we were clear about this. We revived the East African community. It had collapsed. We revived it. We created COMESA. Recently we have worked on the CFTA. It is a skeleton, because you know there are no roads, the infrastructure is not yet there. But that's where we are. It's good that we are aiming at that target. So that is the third crucial area we have dealt with in order to facilitate business. Now, markets. And we have also negotiated with the USA when Mr. Clinton was in power. We worked with our Africans. You know, there are Africans in the US. One of them was a president until recently. So we worked with our people there, and the Americans gave us a law called AGOA, African Growth Opportunity Act, where there are 6,500 products. They should get a copy of those documents. 6,500 products, which if you produce in Africa, including in Uganda, will enter the US quota-free, tax-free. This is a very big, it's a gold mine. Only that these people here in Uganda have not been having the experience and so on to take advantage of such a big market. European Union, long ago you gave us the opportunity of EBA, everything but arms. Of course we are not going to export grenades to European Union, so you don't have to worry about, although I make a few grenades, but I will not export them to you people. So again, here you can invest here, export back to Europe. Then the Chinese, they gave us 440 products which we can export to China, tax-free, quota-free. Even India, all these prime ministers have been talking about, although they have not actually implemented, but they have been talking about it. But if we have the products, we can put pressure on them so that they open the Indian market. The Japan, the same. So, number one, a capable state. Number two, dealing with the bottlenecks, especially the hardware bottlenecks, including the cost. Number three, the issue of the market, of the markets. The internal market, the regional market, the continental market, and the international markets for which we have negotiated. Now, that leaves now the software issues you have been talking about. Corruption. Corruption is a software issue. It is easily curable. What I need is some confidentiality with the ambassadors. If a European company comes and my people here ask for bribes, the company whispers to the ambassador whispers to me quietly, we lay a trap, we catch this one, put him, there's a place called Ruzira. It is like a 5-star hotel near the water, but it's not very comfortable. So we can so that's now, and all these software methods we have been using, e-government, e-procurement, those are software methods we can use we can handle their software issues. The delays on the borders, the one stop center, border management. For me, these are easy. Once you have dealt with the hardware, these are easy. What was a bigger problem was in the past, the attitude of the governments not understanding the importance of the private sector. That's what we had to deal with, and that was one of the 10 bottlenecks that we had to deal with. Now so all these the curriculum is part of the bottlenecks, the 10, because it is part of the human resource development. Let me see these bottlenecks, the 10 of them. The 10 bottlenecks which we identified and shared with Africa, and they have now adopted them. Number one was ideological disorientation. This is where people put emphasis on identity. I am a Catholic. I am a Protestant. I am a Muslim. I am this tribe. I am that tribe. and they forgot interests. Yes, you are a Catholic, but who will buy your bananas? Is it wrong for Protestants to buy your banana? How about the Muslims buying your bananas? How about, so our movement, our political movement, which started as a student movement in the 1960s, challenged this bankruptcy of emphasizing identity. And this is the chaos in the Middle East. These are Sunni, these are Shia, these are what? Even you in Europe, you had a lot of that. The 30 years war, religious wars of religion, the conflicts you had with Germany and the other groups, and us, we also came to help you fight those wars. We even went to Japan, and the Japanese were very scared of us. We went to Burma. You know, the British took our people to Burma, and you know the Africans are fond of campfire, dancing at night around fire. So the Japanese would hear Africans dancing, oh, they are roasting the Japanese. So number one was this ideological, this emphasis on identity against rather than interest. Here we challenged it here in Uganda. That's how you see Uganda has been able to move. Now, because of number one, or because of this, you cannot build a capable state. Because if you believe in tribes, how will you build an army if you believe in tribes? Because you are not going to have an army of one tribe. If you have an army of one tribe, it will be resented and not accepted. So that's why we had to defeat this concept of emphasizing identity. So that's how we were able to build capable institutions, a capable army, a capable political party that can win 70% of the vote, 60%. You would not be able to win that support if you went with sectarian ideas, which emphasize identity rather than interests. That's how we are able to unite. Then bottleneck number 3 was the underdevelopment of the human resource. What you are talking about in your documents here. For you are calling it skills and so on. But for us, we are putting together knowledge, skills, and health. We are putting it together as the development of the human resource. Now, number 4, underdeveloped infrastructure as a category. No electricity, no modern roads, no modern railways, no ICT backbone, and so on. And we are saying this makes the cost of production in the economy go up and cannot therefore attract investments. So this is bottleneck number 4, which we have been handling here. Now, because of number 4 above, this is number 5 now, then there is no industrialization. That's how Africa ended up producing only raw materials, because raw materials did not need so much electricity. So, and once you don't industrialize, then you don't create jobs. You lose a lot of money. You see, like cotton. When I export a kilo of what they call lint cotton, I get $1. If that kilo is processed like this one here into a final garment, that same kilo will give me $15. So the kilo for which Africa was getting $1, if somebody makes a final product out of it, he gets $15. So when you talk of donors, that's what I said, no, who is the donor? Africa is the donor. because you are donating about $10, even if you remove transport and so on. You are donating about $10 in every kilo of cotton which you export to destinations without processing. But more seriously, that cotton has 6 job layers. You grow the cotton, those are jobs. You gin the cotton, remove the seeds, those are jobs. Now Africa was ending there at ginning. Then you spin. When you spin the cotton, that's a layer of jobs. You weave, that's another layer of jobs. You print, you put colors, that's another layer. You tailor, that's another layer. There are other byproducts from cotton, like cooking oil and so on, and gunpowder. These are all from cotton. Those are all jobs which Africa exports. So Africa has been exporting money, but also jobs. And that's how you get into this endless crisis, because so many people are not employed. That's why I'm not putting on a suit. I'm putting on this shirt because it is Ugandan made. That's why I'm... So that's another bottleneck. A low level of industrialization was a very big bottleneck. And then number 6 is what I told you, a fragmented African market. Africa was not one market. And without, like the Honorable Karhanga was saying, Ugandans now, these Ugandans, they really like to do dormir. You may see them here, but they like to dormir, to sleep. How do they sleep? Even by the last census, which was 2014, 68% of the homesteads are still doing what they call subsistence farming. They just grow things for eating only. They don't produce for money. It's only 32% who are engaged in commercial activities, according to the census of 2014. And that's what we have been attacking. And they are comfortable. They drink their alcohol, they are dancing, they are not bothered. It is me who is worried. They are not, for them, they are not worried. But what is amazing is that these 32% who are engaged in commercial activities are generating big surpluses already. Surplus of bananas, surplus of sugar, surplus of milk. Yes, the Honorable Eric Arhang is talking of low output per acre. That's still there, but it is curable. He was talking of the coffee in Brazil. From his home area, where he comes from, Bushenyi, the government center at Nyaruzinga. The farmers nearby produce 5.3 tons of bananas per hectare. But the government innovation center produces 53 tons of bananas compared to the 5.3 tons. In Brazil, the production is 80 tons, so we are almost catching up with Brazil. It's just a question of concentrating on it. But still, even with the limited waking up, the production is big. So you can imagine what will happen if all these people wake up. Therefore, the market is very crucial. The integration of the African market, and so on. So these were the 10 bottlenecks. They will give you this speech, and you can look at it. So therefore, all these issues you are talking about, the human rights, the clean cities, ecotourism, environment. The only issue about the environment is if the European Union could help us on the issue of reclaiming the wetlands, because these wetlands were first attacked by our British friends when they were here. They said Uganda had too much water, and they misquoted the example of Holland. You know, Holland has been claiming land from the ocean, but that was claiming land from salt water to agriculture. Here, to claim land from fresh water is wrong. It's wrong. Fresh water. So, in the 60s, they encouraged some of our people to go into the swamps and make farms. That they were trying to copy the example of Holland. Then, in 1962, when we got independence, the Chinese came and introduced swamp rice. This is a disaster, this swamp rice. What they call swamps are actually not swamps. These are tributaries of the Nile. That's where they go and grow swamp rice. So we are now working to persuade these people to leave the swamps but of course, they need to be bribed to go out peacefully. So I'm looking for some money to bribe them. So I'm very happy with all these topics you raised here, but I can assure you that you are in the right place at the right time, and I welcome all these efforts. This conference is really a step in the right direction, where the European diplomats take the lead and the European governments take the lead in encouraging European companies to invest in Africa, including Uganda. You are most welcome, and I wish you good luck. It is now my honor to do what?
Your Excellency, Mr. President, you're going to have an opportunity to sign very quickly.
But I must do something first. What am I supposed to do? To close or what?
No, after you've signed, then you will close, Your Excellency.
Okay, I sign.
Then we'll have the anthem, sir. And there it is, sir.
It is my honor now to sign, and then...
Yes. Right here. A round of applause, please. That's a sustainable business for Uganda, investment, green deals, and innovation. Of course, we had mentioned our co-chairs, our members, and the board. At this juncture, His Excellency will officially close.
We are very sorry that this coronavirus came along. But for us here, we never take this. We are used to fighting these diseases. We used to fight smallpox when it was a problem, and then recently we have been fighting Ebola, and we have been fighting this other one, Marburg and AIDS, and normally we do it by sensitization. So this time our sensitization is, please avoid shaking of hands. People, I don't know why people are addicted to shaking hands. I think they have got some magnetism. But it's not necessary. And all the ministry has put out the do's and don'ts. We think we can really defeat this disease, and it will not take long. If we all do the necessary things, The only problem I see is who are studying it, we are talking about even blood tests, but they claim there is a window of 2 days where the virus will not be seen even in the blood. So we are strong, but fortunately it doesn't stay long. When it goes outside the body, it dies after some time, and you can kill it with alcohol if you. Not alcohol for drinking. I don't drink alcohol. The alcohol, the disinfectants. So we shall defeat it. It's a problem. It's very infectious, apparently, but fortunately, it also doesn't kill, except if you are you have got a weak system, and that's where people can be vulnerable. So we are sorry it came out, but I'm glad you are not deterred. You came. I really thank you, and I think we shall keep your names, the heroes who came. In spite of the enemy, that is, we should keep it in the Uganda Investment Authority. The outsiders who are brave enough to persist and come. So I wish you good luck. It's now my honor to declare the conference closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We shall now rise for the anthems, please. His Excellency the President shall now be escorted away from this venue. By protocol, you can extend a wave. Your Excellency, Mr. President.
TV, turning on your world.
The Timeline is brought to you by
Everywhere you go.
Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook introduced stories, but you won't believe which other platform is planning to introduce them. I'll tell you all about that and more on today's episode of The Timeline. Welcome, my name is Mbipi. Almost every application started working on a dark mode either last year or the year before. That is for those that were much ahead of the rest. But for WhatsApp, that has had a few issues with its dark mode, it's planning to introduce this to its desktop version of the messaging app. People often find that dark modes are not as prevalent as they would like, and this can be particularly seen in the case of WhatsApp. The world's most popular messaging platform hasn't really offered a good quality dark mode to users, although Android users did find that the better channel for their app offered a dark mode that might just end up getting a wider rollout any day now. The desktop version of the messaging app did not have any such feature, however, and as a result of this, a lot of people started wondering whether they would ever be able to get a dark mode that they could use on this particular version of the app all in all. It turns out that the dark mode for WhatsApp's desktop version could be coming in pretty soon if the code that is used to govern the app is anything to go by. Certain indications seem to make it seem that the dark mode would be a hidden feature, although given the immense popularity of features like this, it would be tough to understand why WhatsApp would do that. It all started with Snapchat. Stories, a feature that became very popular. Then Instagram jumped on board. Then Facebook right after followed, and now LinkedIn is joining this bandwagon. The social network for professionals announced it's currently testing Snapchat-like stories internally and will plan to expand out to members in the coming months. Pete Davis, LinkedIn's head of consumer products, said in a post that in the previous year they started asking themselves what stories might look like in a professional context. He said they spread